It was an extraordinary exchange between Donald Trump and Zelensky in the Oval Office.
You're gambling with World War III.
Should Ukraine be given its land back by Russia, its sovereign territory?
Frankly,
So you're saying Russia should keep...
Let me answer the question. No, I'm sorry, I completely reject that. It's not different at all. It's a conflict. Let's not be childish about other examples.
Stephen Flynn made a jibe at you and...
A few of Putin's poodles who are not in their seat.
I'm not taking any garbage, any jealous, weak politician in Westminster. We're the strongest, we're the toughest. This is gross negligence. It's a complete betrayal. It's treachery. It's dangerous. Starmer is the stupid one. When Reform is elected, we're going to rip up this deal.
It was an extraordinary exchange between Donald Trump and Zelensky in the Oval Office. What did you make of that when you saw it?
Look, the reality is that peace talks are always difficult. Most conflicts and wars end up in some form of difficult, tense negotiation. And this was always going to be the case. Normally that happens behind closed doors. Very unusual to see it in the public gaze. And
did it shock you?
Yes, it shocked everybody. But what you've got to do is actually focus on what's the objective. The objective is we've got to find a way to get to an enduring peace. And the only way we can do that is by talking, however difficult, however hard it is. And it's actually not about personalities. It's about the objective. To get an enduring peace, it's all around the quality of the security guarantees. And I've been saying that for weeks, as has Nigel, and it's also around the money. And actually, there's $300 billion of Russian state assets held in Western central banks that Western leaders are being ridiculously feeble about having the courage to say, right, we're going to take those state assets from the aggressor Russia, and we're going to use those to help rebuild Ukraine, to help defend Ukraine with those security guarantees, and potentially to repay some of the money that's being donated by Western nations. So there's a lot to go for there. That money is a critical part of the security guarantees. And it's funny that people are reluctant to talk about it. I think it's completely unacceptable. We can get the right strong security guarantees. We've got to put everything on the table.
Should Ukraine be given its land back by Russia, its sovereign territory?
Yeah, yes, it's sovereign territory, of course. But at the end of the day, people want peace. And everybody has to be, frankly...
So you're saying Russia should keep...
Let me answer the question. Everybody has to be honest about it. There are different ways to deal with land issues. For example, you could reach a peace agreement where you accept that the sovereign territory is Ukraine, but you grant a long lease to Russia, for example. No one wants to reward Russia, but to get to peace, difficult discussions and compromises have to be made. Frankly, the West failed in its response to Russia's invasion of Crimea and the east of Ukraine. Didn't step up to the plate. But we are where we are. Mistakes have been made in the past. Let's remember, back in 2008, at the Bucharest NATO summit, it was America that said Ukraine should join NATO, and it was Germany and France that rejected it, and Britain didn't even show up. So, we've all made bad mistakes in history. Just imagine, if Ukraine had joined NATO over a decade ago, Putin wouldn't have gone into Crimea and the east of Ukraine. So no one's blameless here, but Putin is the aggressor. But we have to get to a peace, and that will involve difficult negotiations.
People might be a bit confused because reform is all about patriotism and protecting the Britain's borders.
People shouldn't be confused at all.
So are Ukraine's borders less important than the UK borders?
Sovereign borders are sovereign borders. We're robust and clear about that. But we've all made mistakes. And sometimes we all end up doing things and accepting compromises that we don't want to accept. In the UK, we had tense, difficult negotiations and really uncomfortable compromises were made to get peace in Northern Ireland, including, people forget, we had to concede the possibility in the future of a referendum in Northern Ireland to join the Republic. Really difficult, it might never happen, might happen in decades to come, who knows? So, and that peace has lasted 25 years plus. No one's saying it's easy.
People would say Northern Ireland is quite different to...
No, I'm sorry, I completely reject that. It's not different at all. It's a conflict. It was a war. It went on for a long time and people died. And we ended up making a difficult compromise that was uncomfortable, but peace was secured. And in that sense, we were dealing with terrorists that were aggressive and were killing people. Right? Here you've got a Russian aggressor that has created a conflict and a war and is killing people. And it's delusional to think that we'd like to push Russia back, but the reality is that it's delusional to think that Ukraine is going to be able to take back Crimea, for example. So we've got to try for a peace.
Let's say Wales or Cornwall were taken over by an aggressor of some kind. To reach a peace, would you cede those territories or would you keep fighting to keep those territories?
Look, that's a hypothetical that we don't need to discuss. We're talking about Ukraine here. Let's not be childish about other examples. Focus on Ukraine. Focus on how do we get a peace with difficult negotiations, tense negotiations, uncomfortable compromises. But fundamentally, we're 3 years in. We've got a stalemate. It's quite right for President Trump, elected on a mandate of securing peace, for him to try for peace.
So you'd be
quite
satisfied
right for him.
with
Quite
Russia
right.
keeping that territory?
It's quite right for President Trump to try and secure a peace. It might not be possible. A peace is only a peace if it endures with security guarantees. No one's comfortable with any of this. Don't be daft. Look, we all hate it, but equally, we all want peace. Most of all, the brave Ukrainians want peace. But actually, I think there's a recognition that the support from the West to Ukraine has enabled Ukraine to bravely defend itself, to stop total occupation by the hideous aggressor Putin. And that has put Ukraine in a position to have a negotiation. The remarkable incursion into Russia by Ukraine was also a significant moment, and all credit to the Ukrainian leadership and to the brave soldiers who did that. That was a remarkable achievement, which really put Putin on the back foot. So look, we need to find a way to peace, to get to peace that endures. Of course it's difficult. Of course no one wants to be in the situation we're in, but we are where we are. We've got to find a way out of it.
Stephen Flynn made a jab at you and other Reform MPs calling you Putin's poodles. What would you say in response to that?
He's just being childish. Let me just remind everybody, including all the Daily Express readers and the Sunday Express readers, it was only Reform UK in the election last year that talked about peace through strength by having a commitment to get to 2.5% of defence spending of GDP in 3 years and 3% in 6 years. We were the only party that recognises you need peace through strength. It wasn't in the Conservative manifesto, it wasn't in the Labour manifesto. Now, quite rightly, Keir Starmer is catching up with the reform policy. 3% probably is not going to be enough. So, contrary to the garbage that's been spoken, we are the strongest on understanding that the best way to guarantee peace is prepare for war. That means serious, competent, significant defence spending. And we said in our election contract, slash foreign aid. Now Starmer's agreeing with us. So yeah, once again, we've actually been proven that we're the strongest, we're the toughest, we're ahead of the game, and we're right.
The Prime Minister criticised yourself and Nigel Farage, Reform MPs, for not being at the defence spending announcement in the Chamber and the debate. Why weren't you there?
Because I had a commitment, long-standing commitment in Lincolnshire on an energy conference. Energy is critical to our national security. It's critical to people's prosperity. I was at the 3-hour debate on Ukraine. I spoke a couple of times, very robustly, in support of peace through strength, very robustly about my experience going to Ukraine 13 months ago, where I donated a 5-figure sum with other volunteers. We bought pickup trucks, filled them with medical supplies, drove them to Ukraine, gave them to frontline soldiers, met with people who were developing the drones, wept alongside mums weeping over the graves of their sons in cemeteries. So I'm not taking any garbage from any jealous, weak politician in Westminster. We're the strongest, we're the toughest. That's why we're now leading in the national polls, and I'm very proud of that.
Is the conflict in Ukraine existential as regards Britain, with Russia violating territory? Does it impact us here as well?
Well, at the end of the day, I repeat my point. The best way to guarantee peace is prepare for war. And people are making ridiculous analogies about appeasement and linking it to 1938. The difference here is that we've always been talking about the need for strong security guarantees. That's the critical thing. Back in 1938, there was no discussion about that. So it's a complete false analogy. And we have to recognise one of the reasons we are where we are is because Western nations have been weak. They haven't paid up. They banked the Cold War dividend, didn't invest for the potential of something happening in the future. And so, we've all got ourselves to blame for ending up where our defence forces and ammunition and resources are not strong enough. But I repeat, of course, Putin is a vile dictator and aggressor. The only way that you can deal with that is to have a strong security guarantee to get to a peace in Ukraine and to ensure that they realise that the strength of NATO and the Western resolve is absolute, and that we've all got enough equipment, technology and people to deal with future threats.
What do you make to Trump's Gaza plan? Because he released a video which seemed to be AI, depicting it as sort of like a seaside resort with massive skyscrapers and massive beaches, him and Benjamin Netanyahu at a hotel pool. What did you make of that when you saw that?
Look, the truth is that President Trump quite rightly has said, we can't carry on as we are. We can't be here in 20 years' time with people killing each other in Gaza and Israel and the West Bank. And he said, we've got to think big, we've got to think differently. He set out a big, ambitious vision, which...
Would you support that?
What we all support is peace in the Middle East. And essentially, those who instantly criticised it, quite rightly, he was very smart. He said, well, okay, if you don't like my plan, what's your plan? It's your region, you're the Arab nations, you've got the money, you've got the land, what's your plan?
So you'd rather not see those massive skyscrapers and big developments?
I love skyscrapers.
Trump hotels,
I'm a real estate guy.
Trump hotel.
We all want peace. Trump wants peace, right? You've got to have a vision and you've got to have courage in order to get there. And at the moment, no one else had that vision. And what Trump quite rightly said, if you don't like my plan, what's your plan?
Finally, what did you make of Keir's visit to the White House?
He had a reasonable visit to the White House. But most importantly of all, I'm very anxious that he is continuing to pursue with this betrayal of Britain by giving away a very valuable strategic interest in the Chagos Islands.
Were you surprised that Trump appeared to back that?
Look, the reality is, as we understand, America's got much bigger fish to fry. It's worried about China, it's worried about Ukraine, it's worried about Russia, as we all are. And in a sense, Trump and his team are saying, well, hang on, so you dumb limeys are going to pay these tens of billions of pounds to Mauritius. We're going to get these islands for 140 years or such like. We've got possession, so it's not our problem, it's your problem, Britain. If you're stupid enough to give away a freehold and pay someone else to take it, that's your problem. That's what I think they're going through. And I think this is gross negligence. It's a complete betrayal. It's treachery. It's dangerous. And we're absolutely furious. So what I can tell your readers is that when Reform is elected, we're going to rip up this deal. We're not going to recognise it. We're going to stop the payments. We're going to stop direct flights to Mauritius. We're going to stop visas to Mauritians. This is an invalid deal that is in breach of the original international treaty in the 1960s, when, let's remember, Britain paid £3 million to Mauritius as part of a deal to give up any potential future claims. Mauritius is in breach of that deal. It's an outrage. We've got to stand up and say, this is not happening. So I'm telling the Express readers, Reform UK will stand up for British interests, we will stop those payments, and we will not continue this mad treaty.
Do you think Mr. Trump knows the full information? Do you think
He's far too busy for that. And I just repeat the point, from their perspective, it's not their problem. Starmer is the stupid one who's paying the wants to pay our taxpayers' cash, pensioners' cash, to the Mauritians who are trying to they're literally trying to steal our freehold and take our money.
Apart from that, you think Starmer had a good visit?
I think he had a reasonable visit, and given what's happened since, it's irrelevant. Starmer's visit is now irrelevant, given what's happened since. I just repeat the point that we've got to try for peace. There are always difficult negotiations. You'll always have difficult walk-out-style moments. The fact that he was in public rather than private, regrettable. Keep a focus on the objective and keep a focus on the guarantees.